All right. Hey, this is Tom in Western North Carolina again, and I believe this is going to be episode 3 of how to make a chair. And this is going to be a much better video than the ones I made before because I've got a cameraman this time, my buddy Evan. And so this episode is going to be about making the back posts. And it's a kind of a long, complicated thing, but I'm going to try to make it go pretty easy. And anyways, you saw me split out the log in episode 2. And right here in front of me is part of that log. It's an eighth of it. I split it into 8 pieces. And I'm hoping to get 2 back posts out of each piece. And I've got this one marked out. And I used a ruler to find the center of this piece right here. And I've marked it. And I've got to draw the line right on the ray. And I marked this little mark I call a match mark. And it identifies these 2 pieces, where they match up to each other. And then I've got a 4 on each one because this is the 4th one of this series. And I'm hoping to make 6 to 8 chairs out of this log. So anyways, I'm going to split this. And I'm going to use a hatchet. And this hatchet belongs to me, so I can do anything I want with it, no matter what you guys say. Anyways, I'm putting it right there on the line. And I'm going to hit it with this here sledgehammer. This is a 6-pound sledgehammer. Once I hit it, I'm going to look right here and see where my crack is going, and I'm hoping that it goes right straight down. It looks like it's going pretty straight. Going down pretty good. There it went. All right. Split pretty good, pretty even. And just a side note, here's another hatchet that I've used for that same purpose, and it's a different brand, but you can see that it got peened way over time. It's obviously softer metal. That other one I used, I like it better. It's a true temper. I find them at the flea market. And that one even has Boy Scouts of America written on it. Anyways, these pieces now, I am going to shape them into back posts. And basically what I'm going to do, the next thing I'm going to do to these is I'm going to split this sapwood off. This is the sapwood back here. And so I'm going to split the sapwood off. Probably about right there. Because what I want to be left is I want to have a square on here that's 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches, and I want it to be basically right on the grain line. So there's barely 1.5 inches there, so maybe I'm going to split this back, maybe a growth ring here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now, split one of these. Split it just about like that right there. Now right there, when you're splitting a long piece like this, basically this piece here is a lot more flexible than this piece. And the piece that flexes, it tends to rip out and not go all the way down. So the thing you want to do is you want to get your splitting tool out of there. Like that. And then you want to go to the other end, and you basically want to get right on that same growth ring if you can. About right there. This piece, you can see that this piece is bigger at this end than the other end, and that's because this was the bottom log in the tree, and it's got a little bit of a flare in it. See how that met back up? So that just becomes firewood. And here's my piece that I'm going to make a back post out of. Now, I'm not going to actually show you doing this, but what I'm going to do, what I would do, and before I tell you that what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you that in the books, and if you don't have all these tools, you can do all these steps with a draw knife and a shaving horse. And I will show you some draw knife and shaving horse work, but it's not going to be this roughing out part, because I do this stuff with machinery if I can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run this face right here, the fatter of the faces. I'm going to run this face on the joiner. And I'm going to try to get it right on one of these growth rings. And I'm going to try to make it so it's right on a growth ring all the way down. And then once I get that done, I'm going to try to make some kind of guess about which side that I want to make 90 degrees to that side. And I'm going to put that on the bandsaw. And I'm going to, now that I have a flat side to set on the bandsaw, I'm going to be able to run this right through the bandsaw. And I can usually eyeball it right down a line like that. And I can get a pretty straight line that I'm just going to take right off of the one side. And then off of that first flat side and that side I just bandsawed, I'm going to go back to the joiner and joint that side and get it, flat and straight like you do with a joiner. And then once I have two flat sides, 90 degrees from each other, I put a piece of tape as a guide on my bandsaw, and that's 1 5/8 is what I use. And then I can do off of that, off my two flat sides, I can make two cuts and turn this into a square. Now once I get that square done, I take it over to a planer. And I plane it then, this is 1 5/8, I plane it down to 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches. And the nitty gritty of that is actually that you plane this direction a little bit more than you plane this direction, because this direction shrinks more than this direction. If you make it perfectly square at this point, when it dries out, it'll end up not being square anymore. Shrinks less this way. So anyways, once you get to that point, you end up with pieces that look like this. This is square and pretty smooth on all four sides. And so I've got a pair of these right here. And at this point, if I hadn't done it already, these would be cut to length. And the length on these particular ones is 38 inches. And then I would carefully choose, and see, I've still got my match marks and everything on these. This little mark is my match mark, not this big mark, that little mark. And so I choose which side that I want to be the front and which side I want to be the back. And I'm going to put a taper on. I'm going to cut a taper off of the back of the post. And all that, most of that has to do with what I think the grain looks like and stuff like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a ruler, and it's 1 inch thick here. I'm going to lay that on there and draw a line across there. I'm going to cut that much off of these at the end here. But then I'm going to take my chair stick, and I guess we'll probably have to get into that at some later date, all the marks on the chair stick. But there are taper marks on this stick, and I put them right here. And there's also a taper going to be down here. So I'm going to turn this over on its side, and I'm going to move that 1 inch mark around the corner, and I've got my taper marks back here, and so I'm going to draw those lines. Like that. I'll just go ahead and draw this other one. It didn't take very long. Now this is more things. This is a special pencil. Maybe there's a close-up coming of it. My camera person knows how to do that. As far as I know, this pencil is not made anymore. You saw what it said, ink blot, no blot ink pencil. And so this is a pencil that writes pretty good on wet wood. So I don't know what the alternative is anymore. Sorry about that, young people. So anyways, another thing that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to draw a circle on this end here, and I've got a little, this is actually a drill stop, but it's good for drawing a circle. I'm drawing a circle like that, and there's my match mark again. This big mark down here is when I pull it out of the steamer, that's my mark that I know is down when I put it on the bending form. There's a taper marks there. Okay, so now what I do with that piece, this line right here, and again, you can do this with a draw knife if that's all you've got to use, but I go to my bandsaw and I saw that off with my bandsaw. And then once I saw that off, I lay those two down right next to each other. You know, I'm just showing you this right now, but I lay those down together and I put a stop on the table and I take my plane and zoom, I plane that to get, you know, the roughness of the bandsaw out of it and kind of even them up so they're both kind of exactly the same. But anyways, after all of that we did on the joiner, the bandsaw, the planer, the plane, we end up with a piece that looks like this. It has a taper on this end. You probably can barely see that is tapered, but that's 1 inch there. Goes to 1.5 inches here. And this is the back, this is the front. All these little black marks on here are little debris that comes off of the planer and stuff. That's iron reacting with the tannic acid in the wood. So I'm going to take this piece now and I'm going to do some draw knife work on it. So I'm backing up, going to the shaving horse. So here's my draw knife, here's my shaving horse. And up to this taper mark that I have on here, I'm going to just be making this thing 8-sided. And I don't know if you can tell by the sound or anything, but this really cuts easy when it's still green and wet. And down here at the bottom below this taper mark, I'm tapering it from this size up here down to that circle that I drew on the end. And I'm pretty much right now, I'm actually leaving the circle. I'm just going right to the outside edge of the circle. But up here I'm making it 8-sided, and all the sides should be equal size. And I'm doing this step right now while it's still green because it's easier to shave the wood. Alright? So you can see right there that I'm shooting towards the circle. And after a couple more minutes, you would end up with a piece of wood that looks like this. It's 8-sided in this area here, and at this end it's got a rough taper on it down to the circle. And once you have both your pieces like that, and see this big mark right there, that's my identification mark for when I take it out of the steamer. That's the bottom. That's where I'm going to lay it down on the bending form. So now we're going to go back.
Action.
All right. Now I'm over by the steamer now, and if I had my two pieces, I'd be ready to put them in the steamer right now. And anyways, this is the steamer that I have. You can see there's a hot plate, and there's actually a whole copper pan there. I've got it encased in wood just for insulation, but it's copper, and these pieces are just the lids. And I usually have a tarp and a piece of plastic on it to hold in the heat, but I've removed them right now. But right there is a steamer, and this is copper, and there's just water in the whole bottom of it. It's getting kind of low. There's my bottle. I'm going to pour a little extra water in it right now so it doesn't go dry. There's getting a little low right then. But there's all manner of steam boxes you can make. And one of them is just a wooden box, basically, with a pan under it. But I've had these pieces in there for about an hour and a half now, and we're going to see if it'll bend. Bending a little bit. This is what they call limbering, and I'm not sure that it's actually necessary, but it's how I was taught to do it, so I do it some. So I bring that piece over here, put it on my bending form, get that end in right there. Not right on here, exactly right. Trying to get it right even with the bending form, because I'm going to use the bending form to make sure it is lined up straight. See, I can do that pretty good. And I'm going to just use one of these little type clamps. I can that's bending good, isn't it? Probably don't need my gloves anymore. I'll throw them off. I've got some pieces. When we cut that taper off, I saved some of those pieces and I use them for padding. Oh boy, look at that. Don't need all that. Or maybe I should have done the whole thing down, got the whole bench. But you notice that I have a space under my bending form, and that's so you can put a clamp like this on it and remove it from the table. If you clamp like this one is on every one, eventually you can't get it off the table. And you've got to be able to move this so that you can put another clamp on it, or so that you can bend another bend another one. So right now I'm looking down the side of it because I want this thing to be straight when it dries. If you don't do that now, if you get a curve in it, you got to fix that later. But right here is where it would normally crack or break if it's going to break, but this one hasn't broken, hasn't even done nothing. So far this is really, really good. So now I want to put the kind of more permanent clamps on it. I'm going to put a block of wood right there. What do I need? About something like this. Maybe. Will that fit? Nope. Get this one. I think this one will fit. Oh no. Yeah, it's going to fit. I'm going to put this one on here. That's a funny looking clamp. But if I go to the flea market, which I don't do very often, but clamps, old time clamps like this is one of the things I look for. I think you can usually get pretty good deals on them. And whether you use those clamps very much or not, they can come in handy. And I'll put a clamp, another one of those type clamps right here. This one says Craftsman. Woohoo! But you notice I use these pieces of wood as padding, because if you don't, right where you put this clamp, it'll dent that wood because it's soft right now from being steamed, and it will put a mark, you know, that black, it'll put a black mark there where the metal touches. So I'm going to take that back off now. And right there, I think we have pretty successfully bent a back post. And we're going to have to set that aside now to dry, and you know, however long that takes. So anyways, I think that's a video, and that's episode 3. If you got any specific questions or you didn't get such and such, you know, put it in the comments and I will try to answer it. This is October of 2020. So if you put it in the comments in 2025, I'm not sure that I'll read the comment. But anyways, I hope you're doing well out there, and I am thankful for what I have, and I hope you can be thankful for what you have. So I'll see you soon.